This conference will now be recorded.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's interactive webinar. My name is Emily Kobier-Schell, and I'm a member of the Build Up editorial team. Before we begin, again, I'll remind all participants that this session is being recorded and will be published on the Build Up portal in coming days. This is also an interactive session with breakout rooms where you'll be able to have the opportunity to unmute yourself and turn on your camera to participate in discussions. We invite you to take part in both the breakout rooms and the Q&A session, but we kindly ask you to remain muted during presentation. So please keep an eye on your own mute button. The team will indicate when the floor is open for your questions and comments. You can also send your questions through the chat to the organizers. And on that note, we'll begin with a short introduction to the Build Up portal.
Welcome to Build Up, the European Commission's portal for energy efficiency and renewable energy in buildings. Directly stemming from the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, Build Up is the meeting place for everyone involved in making the European building and construction sector more energy efficient. Every month we focus on a topic that is key to making Europe's buildings as energy efficient as possible. Exploring that, you can find the latest content such as expert talks, webinars, case studies, and more. From architects and engineers to academics and policy makers, we've got you covered. Build Up brings together thousands of registered members to reap the benefit of Europe's collective intelligence on all aspects of energy efficiency and renewable energy in buildings. The Build Up portal benefits from the expertise of our ambassadors. Drawn from industry and academia, the ambassadors bridge the gap between EU and national level and help shape our editorial content. Want to promote your work? Build Up disseminates your research, projects, and events through a variety of channels. Become a member to exchange knowledge with your peers. You can disseminate tools and resources, share good practices, and consult open source publications. Join the discussion on social media and become part of the Build Up community, or subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest news. However you participate, the Build Up portal is here to inspire, inform, and connect. Build Up, the European portal for energy efficiency and renewable energy in buildings. Join the community for opportunities and updates.
So it is a pleasure for Build Up to host today's interactive webinar entitled Unlocking the Potential of SMEs, a holistic framework to train SME workforce in circular construction, brought to you by BUSGoCircular, Circular Economy Foundation, NFect, and Build Up. This webinar is the second of a four-part webinar series hosted by Build Up and organized by the BUSGoCircular project this year. The series highlights how different stakeholders could join forces to reskill and upskill the building sector workforce with circular skills by highlighting the main takeaways and outcomes of the project. The target audience for today's webinar is SMEs. The session today will be as follows. We will begin with an introduction to the BUSGoCircular project and a short introductory poll in Slido. These will be presented by Srija Raghunathan, Built Environment Consultant at Circle Economy. Srija will then continue with a presentation of the framework for circular interventions in the construction value chain. We will then hear about the fundamental training pack for SMEs from Ira Ivanova, project lead at NFect. Following Ira, we will hear from Silvia Pavlova, Certified Management Consultant in Strategy and International Business Development and founder at PropTech Bulgaria and CSEE PropTech, who will present the importance and benefits from training in circularity for SMEs in construction. This will be followed by a short Q&A session on each of the presentations prior. We will then move towards our breakout sessions, starting with a short briefing from Ute Schwab, Project Manager at Circle Economy, followed by the actual breakout sessions, which will last around 15 minutes. We invite and encourage you to make the most of these sessions by actively participating in them. Immediately following the breakout sessions, we'll have a second Slido poll, and then we'll begin to round out the day's session with some conclusions and main takeaways from the day. And finally, we'll end the session with a quick overview of upcoming webinars and a brief thank you from BuildUp. Again, we invite and encourage the audience to send us questions through the GoToMeeting chat that can be answered during the Q&A session, as well as to actively take part in the breakout discussions. You'll be able to find the webinar recording on the BuildUp portal and on our YouTube channel in the coming days, together with the presentation slides. And now, without further hesitation, we'll move directly to our first speaker of today, Srija from Circular Economy. Srija, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for that very clear and concise introduction and kicking us off. Yes, I would like to welcome you all once again to today's webinar, the title, Empowering SMEs in Circular Construction. As the name suggests, we will, of course, be looking a bit into understanding what is the role of SMEs in circular construction. But more importantly, our focus will be to understand, as representatives of SMEs, what can you do to facilitate this kind of transition that we want to have, to identify the different skill gap, to focus on knowledge enhancement and impart training. Can we move on to the next slide, Emily? Yes, a bit of context setting before we dive into our project. Why circular construction? Why do we need a circular built environment? And as many of us are already aware, the construction industry is responsible for 40% of the primary energy consumption in Europe. It's responsible for 36% of carbon emissions, and adopting a circular economy will actually help in significantly reducing the embodied carbon emissions through optimum use of building materials, through reducing the material consumption, and of course it will eventually help in reducing the total carbon emissions from the sector. Now, the real question that we want to focus here is, how do we actually do it? And the obvious answer is people. So with 18 million people being employed in the construction sector, and it's responsible for 9% of the total GDP of the EU. So yeah, again, the answer is obvious, and today we will be focusing on how can we have a skilled workforce to make this transition happen. Next slide, please. Yes, coming back to our main target audience today, why do we want to focus on SMEs specifically? As you can see, so the micro enterprises alone form the biggest part of the sector, which accounts to 94.1%. About 99.9% of the European sector is actually construction sector is actually composed of only the SMEs. So this itself is a good indication to see the kind of potential and more than that, the kind of huge power that the SMEs have actually to bring about this transition. And yeah, as you can see from data from 2016, which shows that construction SMEs make up 88% of the total employment and 80% of the total value added of the construction sector in Europe. Yeah, this is why today it's not about us telling you what SMEs can do. It's about us discussing together to understand how can SMEs facilitate this kind of transformation. Moving on to the next slide. Yes, yeah, before I explain what we did in the BUSGoCircular project, we have a small introduction video for you just to give you a brief overview of what this project is about.
Build-up skills projects work on sustaining of the built environment. This to build capacity in the construction sector needed to take up the challenge of empowering the renovation wave. For example, in H2020 sister project Bus League. With regards to the renovation wave, there are several important drivers. The energy transition towards a green and just system of energy supply and use. The material transition to unlock the powers of the circular economy in order to ensure an affordable and far more sustainable energy transition. The climate transition in order to ensure climate robust and flexible interventions needed to mitigate climate change. The digital transition, needed to energize and upscale both demand and supply. In BUSGoCircular, we explore how the material transition can be applied intertwined with the thrust delivered by the energy, climate, and digital transitions. This to boost both the speed and the long-term sustainable impact. When you want to surf the renovation wave as a professional, enjoying the power and free energy of the wave, upskilling and training are essential. Within BUSGoCircular, we are focusing on one big and hairy audacious topic where many elements come together. Realizing multifunctional green roofs, facades, and interior elements which are contributing to energy transition, climate adaptation in a circular way. All this while harnessing the power of digitization. As you can see, working on sustaining the built environment gives many opportunities for value creation by integration of multifunctional green roofs, facades, and interior elements. In order to do so, BUSGoCircular works with a full value chain approach involving and connecting relevant people and expertise needed. By application of the Key Elements Framework, Circular Economy, the consortium develops a circular skills qualification framework for sustaining the built environment. This, together with several other outcomes, BUSGoCircular delivers a powerful new set of tools for sustaining the built environment in a circular way. By application of the Key Elements Framework, the consortium develops a circular skills qualification framework for sustaining the built environment. That will be applied to the topic of multifunctional green roofs, facades, and interior elements. BUSGoCircular has several actions dedicated to stimulate demand for circular skills, such as guidelines for green public procurement and use of the Build Up Skills Advisor app to trigger and upskill. To put the results to use in practice, BUSGoCircular Works will train a group of trainers from all over Europe. These trainers will get the mission to train at least one group of trainers in the country they work in. All trainers together will form a trainers community. In order to improve the reputation of the construction sector, BUSGoCircular will work with a mentoring program for diverse talent. As the Circular Skills Qualification Framework should be replicable, BUSGoCircular will test the use of the framework into at least 2 other domains, for example, on wall isolation and on ventilation systems. BUSGoCircular, step-by-step empowering and greening the circular renovation wave.
Yes, you're good at your job, but your processes, though.
Sorry for that. Please continue.
Thank you. Yeah, so we hope that the video was a bit helpful for you to understand what the project is about. Now, before of course, you heard a lot of different frameworks and terminologies that we introduced in the video, but before diving into all of that, we would like to ask you a question. So the question that you can see on the screen, so what is the main reason for your business to consider implementing circular economy training? Emily, could we switch to the Slido poll, the code for the Slido poll, and the audience can jump in? Thank you. Yeah, as you can see on the screen, may I kindly request you to go to the website slido.com, and you can see the code on the screen. Once you enter the code, you'll be able to see the question, and yeah, I am curiously awaiting your answers. I think we have some great answers on the screen already. So improvement, resource resource reduction, construction sustainability to address the market gap, EU regulations, initiatives. I see that few more participants are typing. We'll wait for the participants to stop typing and then we can continue with our discussion. Yes, thank you for that input. It's really nice to see that you also resonate with the kind of findings that we discovered during our journey of the BUSGoCircular project. Now let's move on to understand what we have to offer as part of the program. Can we move on to the next slide? Yes. Yeah, I think you would have already heard this terminology or this framework in the introduction video, what we call the Circular Construction Skills Framework. This is one of the frameworks that we actually developed through the project. I would be explaining a bit into as to how did we develop this framework, but more importantly, it's nice for you to know that this is not just a theoretical framework, but it's something you can actually apply to your organization to identify, for example, identify the skill gap, identify the kind of knowledge or the competencies that you will need to transform to embrace this kind of transformation, and also to develop a tailor-made training program for your organization. Can we move on to next slide? Yes, as I was saying, so before we go on to the construction skills qualification framework, a bit of background as to how did we develop it. We first started looking into the framework for circular interventions. I'll be talking about it in the next slide. So the framework for circular intervention is basically a set of circular strategies which are relevant for the built environment sector. Using this as the foundation, we looked into who will be the different professionals in the industry who are responsible for implementing these strategies, what will be the skills that they'll need, what will be the knowledge and the competencies that they're going to need. And using this information, we actually developed the construction skills qualification framework, and this framework became the foundation for several of the training programs that we developed later on, and one of which is the training pack for SMEs, which will be later discussed by my colleague Ida. Can we move on to the next slide? Yes, the 8 key elements of circular economy. We can actually move on to the next slide. Yes, as you can see, just a very quick brief as to what this framework is about. As you can see, it's just two simple representation of the circular strategies in two concentric circles. The inner circle is what we call as the core elements, and the 3 strategies include prioritizing regenerative resources, stretching the lifetime, using waste as a resource. I would not be going deep into each of these strategies, but of course, I welcome you all to look and explore these strategies later on once after the webinar is finished, and the slides will be available to you. Can we move on to the next slide? Yes, the external concentric circle is what we call as the enabling elements. So the 5 enabling elements that you can see on the screen are basically strategies which will help in removing any kind of obstruction or barriers for the core elements. Just to give you a quick example, in the previous slide, we saw that one of the strategies is to reuse resources or materials at the end of the life cycle. And in order for us to do that, it's important that we should be able to disassemble the building. And that is what Design for Future kind of looks into. So in that way, Design for Future is enabling the core element of reusing resources at the end of their life cycle. Yeah, you can definitely find a lot more examples and case studies around this, but not for this webinar, of course. Can we move on to the next slide? Yes, yeah, like I was saying, this framework for circular intervention was actually the foundation which helped in developing the construction skills qualification framework. We can move on to the next slide. Yeah, what this framework is about, I've been talking about it, but what does it actually consist of? It consists of 9 tasks on circularity. So the 9 tasks are basically the 8 circular interventions that I previously introduced. These were adapted and tweaked a bit to fit the construction skills required for the industry. These tasks are further subdivided into 71 different subtasks, and we also looked into the different construction professionals who will be responsible for implementing these subtasks. And we also have a corresponding 84 unit of learning outcomes. What do they mean? I'll be explaining in the next slide. Next slide. Yes, yeah, before I get into that, so like I was saying, so this is not just a theoretical framework, this is actually a practical framework that you can use within your organization. So to say, so this actually help in giving a practical perspective for the required skills in the construction industry. This framework can be used as a benchmark or as a reference to increased recognition of the learned skills. The different 84 learning outcomes that I mentioned, but we'll be discussing further. These will actually be used as a reference or a baseline for you to develop tailor-made training program. And yeah, as I was saying, so this can actually be adapted to different subsectors of the construction industries. For example, if you're representing the installation system, or if it's the target audience is architecture, it can be adapted accordingly. Next slide. Yes, yeah, good to know that the scope of this qualification framework, it's primarily an introductory course, so you will be understanding how to integrate different circular principles in your existing activities. But of course, we will not be diving deep into the sector. For example, if you want to understand the hands-on skills of installing heat pumps, that's not something which is covered in this framework. But apart from that, of course, we are also trying to include how you as a member of the construction value chain can function efficiently, which means we look into a bit into the interdisciplinary skills such as collaboration and education. Can we move on to the next slide? Yeah. Just a quick snapshot of how this framework looks like. As you can see, the cell highlighted in green, designed for future. This is the circular intervention that we saw previously, and this becomes the tasks in this framework. This was subdivided into two different subtasks, and this one example is designed to reduce waste during production and use. Yeah, and as you can see in the next column, so we have the different acronyms. Apologies, we do not have the full form for the acronyms, but these are basically the different construction professionals. For example, AR stands for architects. So architects are responsible for implementing the subtasks, and the numbers are basically unit of learning outcomes, which we can see in the next slide. Yes, so unit of learning outcomes, these are basically statements which that a learner knows, understand, and is able to do, which basically means it's their responsibility on the completion of the learning process. And this learning outcomes are further divided into knowledge, skills, attitude, and responsibility. I can imagine it's too many terminologies and it looks like a bit of complicated framework for now, but trust me, it's easy once you actually go through it and look and explore it. We can move on to the next slide. Yes, yeah, I'm not going too deep into this, but as you can see, like I was saying, there is a breakup of competence, skills, knowledge. So for every professional and for the corresponding task that we're talking about, what is the kind of competence that they need, what are the skills that they need, and what is the kind of knowledge that they need to be able to implement that particular circular intervention. Yeah, we can jump 2 slides and go to the slide after. Yeah, thank you. So that again, going back, so these are the 9 tasks. So as an organization, you can pick and choose which tasks you want to focus on, and then just map out the different skills, the different professions, and the different knowledge and competencies that you will need in order for you to develop a dedicated tailor-made training program for your specific target audience. We can go on to the next slide. Yes, just a quick example as to how we applied this construction qualification framework to, again, apologies for the acronym. So it basically means multifunctional green roofs and interior facades and interior elements. We have an example for the first task, so prioritizing regenerative and efficient use of resources, and the subtask is applying suitable energy efficiency measures for roofs. You can see how we have written down different professions, the different knowledge and skills and competencies that will be needed. It's just a reference template, but you can of course adapt it and develop it according to your needs. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and I welcome my colleague Ira to take it over from here. Thank you.
Good day from my side, and thank you, Celia, for the introduction so far. My name is Ira Ivanova, and I'm part of NFECT, which is the oldest non-governmental organization in Bulgaria, which for the last 30 years has been supporting municipalities, policy decision makers, educational facilities, individuals in the development of capacity and building capacity and developing energy and resource efficient strategies for the built environment. And then moving to the next slide, and basing on what we've heard so far about the qualification framework, the approach to using it is in a few steps, starting with the identifying the key principles that were just shown, then the relevant tasks and subtasks that are associated to them, reviewing the unit of learning outcomes provided, and designing the training program for your organization. So following those steps and the qualification framework as a tool would allow for the creation of a training content. And in the next slides, through the fundamental training, through the illustration of how the fundamental training packs work, this will be illustrated. And as a original, as a base for those packs, is a note to make that the ambitions of the European Union to become a carbon neutral state by continent by 2050 are supported by a row of documents and directives and action plans. Some of the names you can see on the slide here, and which would expect that there should be around 3 million construction workforce that is and upskilled in the next 5 years, with focus on green practices and sustainability, and which would expect the construction sector to innovate by prioritizing ecological materials and recreating value chains, by digitalization, managing the management of construction sites, and several other issues. And as we already seen, the small and medium enterprises in the construction sector, not only in Europe, actually in Bulgaria, there is enough data supporting this statement as well, that they are a driving force in the transition. So for them, in order to become competitive and being able to correspond to those requirements, it is desirable that there is an upskilling and reskilling effort, which is one of the main issues that has been identified with this is related to money and time. The BUSGoCircular project addresses this issue by creating those training packs, which, if we move on to the next slide, are designed to be simple, attractive, easily accessible, not expensive, educating, shareable, open source, and collaborative. And this by initially setting a frame for training plans, which contain items as in for whom is the training designed for, what is the training on, how it will be trained, and which training material will be used, and the duration of those trainings. And by doing this, the training plans correspond to a critical gap in the lack of a holistic training framework and an open source circular construction or training material on circular construction that provides coverage of the basic knowledge and skills required by the circular construction workforce, where training is otherwise, as it has turned out during research, is often limited to certain professional types in higher education, like for universities and master degrees, or is either held or is contained within in high-priced courses, specific on single topic, and so on. So yeah, those training plans can be used to develop the training packs, the training packs as to enable the small and medium enterprises themselves, if necessary, to form training packs according to their particular needs. And they are developed for unskilled or low skilled workers, so addressing like mm, the 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 mm, the the status quo, or as the current status of things. And if we move on to the next slide, it would show how the approach to designing those training plans was initiated. It is by also detecting the companies related to the construction sector and the professional profiles involved in them. Then analyzing those professions, or extracting them from a methodology used from previous European projects. And in the second step, it was to distribute those professions according to their participation in the 5 main stages of a building project, which is to plan, to procure, construct, operate, and end of service life. And they were divided also in 2 categories: the blue collar workers, who are mainly manual laborers on or found on working on the building site, with usually vocational training and no formal education, and the white collar with technical, administrative, or management roles in jobs. Yes, so in order to and as a result, there was in the next slide we can see the types of the 4 main training packs that came out of analyzing the profiles of the small and medium enterprises across Europe. One which would be starting circularity, construction works in circularity, circularity in installations, and advancing circularity, where now we can look into as an example as to how can this training, or how these training packs are formed or can be formed. We're going to look at an example for the construction works in circularity, and for blue collar specialists. And in the next slide, it can be seen how the index of the training plan looks like. So basically what the modules, or the important modules are, considering this type of specialists. And for all training packs, the first module, the introduction to circular economy in construction, is obligatory. So it's as a basis to what we or giving knowledge on the key principles that were presented already in the previous presentation, giving the base and the knowledge and the feeling towards all the other actions and that should be done when relying on circular economy. In the second module, it's to build to close the loop of the materials. Build to reduce impact, build to reduce waste inside. So different methods to do that. The best practices in the construction site, digitalization as an important factor, and install energy efficiency and measures in buildings. Stretch the lifetime and rethink of the business model, which we will go through illustrative in the next slides. So if we can move on to the next one. So we can give yes the feeling of what kind of content those training modules, those training plans, and resulting training packs. How can what kind of information they can rely on in order to pass on knowledge for construction workers on the site. So at the first module, introduction to circular economy, the presentation of the 3 core and 5 enabling principles, and the next slide would add the one principle: construct and assemble for the future, which through the collaboration of the BUSGoCircular Consortia came out as a important task addressing the happenings on the building site. The next module speaks of the material loops, and here it can be the first principle on prioritizing on the regenerative modules can lead to the fact that on the building side there would be natural materials to be worked with, and knowledge on how to manage those on the building site is important. In the next module, it's addressing the topic of coatings and finishes that are applied in buildings, and knowledge of how to work with such bio-based and biodegradable materials that are becoming more and more common on the market. In the next module, for example, is the build to reduce waste on inside, and this is here how to work with prefabricated and modular structures, for example, or with reversible joints between elements. In module 5 then it's an important issue of here addressing not only the European but also national regulations about the construction demolition waste, the division and the sorting of those materials, and what happens to them. In the next module 6 is speaking about the digitalization aspects and the tools that can be used, like material passports, for example, that give information about what materials are contained in a building, and this would give an insight as to what kind of technology, for example, needs to be applied when renovating, dismantling, or deconstructing a building. In module number 7, it's for example, how to install energy efficiency measures of building. So here it's the basing knowledge, for example, on the passive house principles, which deal with how building envelope should be built properly, with taking into consideration the air tightness, the solar gain, reduction of thermal bridges and ventilation. So what are the proper techniques found on the building site that can ensure that those principles are enabled once the building is finished. And then module 8 is dealing with the topic of stretching the lifetime. So here we can it could be the topics of how to renovate, how to deconstruct, to repair, how to maintain buildings, how to save buildings by proposing, or how to work with existing buildings is, as a knowledge, is valuable. So supporting this module, and in the final proposed module for this type of profile is then rethinking the business model. Here there is an example of what could a circular principle in for product as a service or a new business model looks like. And otherwise this could be employed in some, so, or in this case, as lighting is a service, then once lighting installation is the example from Philips, or their new now line of products or services, light as a service, illustrates, then once if the lighting fixture is somehow needs to be repaired, and how to address those issues. And yes, those the modules, an example of what knowledge or what kind of modules and training materials could be combined for designing a training pack for construction workers. And moving on to the next and final slide is to say that those the first module or the one on basic circularity will be eventually posted and would be available in English for everyone to access. And yes, with this I would like to conclude and then give the word to Sylvia who would tell you more about the experience from the training and receiving training and why is this important for the SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ira, for passing the floor to me. Good afternoon, everyone, and I would like to thank all participants for joining the webinar today. As you have just realized, I was invited by BUSGoCircular training program to participate in this webinar to share with you my experience from your standpoint, because I'm one of you as an SME which uses the framework. I participated in the Train the Trainer program of BUSGoCircular, which was held in July this year. For a few months, me and my partners had the opportunity to make a survey on the applicability of the training among large construction and real estate and asset management operators. So I will have the pleasure to share with you our findings. But before that, just a quick introduction and some words about me. Emily, can we go to next slide, please? I have an extensive experience in construction and real estate, being for more than 10 years an internal consultant to the board of directors of large international holding construction and real estate and IT holding companies. I have been heading projects for organizational restructuring, mergers and acquisitions in these companies, and being a representative of the investor in large construction projects which are valued at more than 100 million of investment. Since 2016, I founded PropTech Bulgaria, which together with the respective organization in Belgium, the UK and Italy, we were the first PropTech associations in Europe. And since then, for more than 7 years now, PropTech Bulgaria and CSE PropTech, which stands for Central and Southeast European PropTech, we represent the region and Bulgaria as a country in the major international PropTech organizations. What gives us, and me particularly today, when sharing with you this information, very unique standpoint is the fact that for this period of more than 7 years, PropTech Bulgaria built the largest database of European PropTech companies, which currently amounts to more than 6,200 tech solutions. These are tech solutions particularly meant to serve the construction real estate sector, inclusive of all ESG solutions, circularity, energy tax, and so on. Meanwhile, from July till today, together with one of our major partners in Bulgaria, which is one of the largest media groups. Emily, can we go to the next slide? Just before sharing the information, today we will focus on how can SMEs in the construction sector stimulate circular skills within their organizations and why it's important. And here I will share our findings from this survey with construction and real estate and asset owners. And afterwards, I will share with you 4 success stories in circular tech for the urban environment. Now, let's move to next slide. So here on this Stacy matrix, you see the results from our survey when we made in-person focused interviews with very large international players in construction and asset management. It was very tricky to organize all this information in an easy to understand way. That's why we selected to use Stacy matrix, though it can be a bit simplified. But it reflects the four reactions to change, because definitely when moving to circular construction, it applies change. And we have this simple reaction with rational decision making and control, with complicated with judgmental decision making and ideological control, with political decision making in organizations and control, compromise, negotiation, and so on. We have the more complex decision making when we have this collaborative ideation, visioning, design, exploration, iterative improvement, knowledge management, and the chaotic, which is disintegration on massive avoidance. So when things become too complicated, definitely we see this massive avoidance of change and the desire of senior managers to go on like they used to have done things so far, just because the information overload is too much for them, and they just cannot cope with so much information. We see this particularly in certain types of construction companies and asset management companies, particularly in the residential asset class. So you see that they're better prepared companies, like those large companies with more than 250 employees and expected annual turnover that surpasses 40 million, which are about to start reporting according to the EU taxonomy from 2025. So they are in a process of clarifying things, and they're more open to changes and more open also to such training frameworks like the BUSGoCircular Construction Framework. And the ones that we see best prepared so far are the financial institutions, publicly listed asset management companies, which are already obliged to report according to the EU taxonomy, and 2023 was a test year for them, and they will formally, officially start reporting since the beginning of next year. As you see, it depends a lot on the asset class and on the size of the company. And it defines their reply, their reaction to change in construction and real estate as a whole, and to circular construction reskilling in particular. Can we move to next slide? We decided also to share with you the findings concerning the other side, if I can say so, of the equation, and this is the innovative corporates that proactively seek to change, and not reactively, just like the previous Stacy matrix, and as well as the PropTechs, the startup and scale-up companies, which provide tech solutions for the construction to real estate. So what we see, and these insights are based on our database. As I mentioned, this is the largest existing database of European PropTechs. So it's really very valuable as insights. So what we see is that we observe these three business models in circular PropTechs out of 6 ones. So the 6 ones are: turn waste into a new product. We have available solutions here, as you see it on the Stacy matrix. Product as a service. Again, we have such solutions. Circular BMS business models. This is BMS, particularly partially recyclable materials. Again, we have such solutions. Sharing platforms, very few. Circular supplies and inputs are really very few. Such solutions and product life and use extensions. So now we ask ourselves the question, why is it so? Why there are some business models that are a bit more saturated than others, where we observe very few solutions? And some of the skill gaps that we observe is that the other three business models that I shared with you, sharing platforms, circular supplies and inputs, and product life and use extension, that have fewer tech solutions, it is due to the fact that these business models require to have more holistic knowledge and experience. And overall, the education in Europe is focused on high specialization, which creates people who know very much about their particular area of expertise, but cannot necessarily think about the links of this area with all other areas. So this is why we see such solutions, these very few solutions, created namely by people who have this holistic approach and who see the bigger picture, not only their own area of expertise. And now I would have the pleasure to share with you the information about very nice for PropTechs. Yes, thank you very much. As mentioned, it is based on our database amounting to 6,000 PropTech companies in Europe. Can we move next? Okay, this is Wasteful. This is one of my favorite solutions. You see the domain name so that you can access and contact them and have more information about them. This solution originates from Bulgaria. Its business model is turn waste into a new product. They turn plastic waste into beautiful paving stones. They share that there are 7 types of plastic, which makes the recycling process quite complicated. The raw material they work with is that mix of plastics that remains after the shredding of bottles, caps, and other precious in inverted commas plastics. Usually, it is treated as non-recyclable and burned or goes to landfill because it is economical to be processed. And they have found a way to create healthy and sustainable products from it. They created these very beautiful payments that you can see on the picture. Next slide. Here you see the 3 other ones, and I will give you information about each of them separately. BuyU.world originates in the Netherlands. Its business model is product as a service. And this tax solution is a product access and rental platform. Their technology creates a seamless rental experience on a pay-per-use or membership basis for people to the products they need for whatever occasion. So rather than you buy and own such products, you can just rent them and afterwards return them to the platform. Next is Carrot Tech, which originates from Norway. Their business model is partially recyclable materials, and Carrot creates a new world of circular materials by collecting data from valuable resources that otherwise go to waste as trash. Their software empowers public and private waste management companies to reward users for their efforts to sort recyclable materials. By connecting individuals to their waste streams, they may incentivize waste reduction and sustainable behavior. So this solution has more impact on society and is meant to improve in certain direction the collective behavior of people in cities. And the final solution originates in Hungary, Composite. Their business model is turning waste into a new product, and they're a gamified service which turns any office food waste into soil, food, and plants it as urban green spaces. A composing robot, high nutrient plant food, gamified impact reporting, compost planning, all of these in one service powered by office communities. So this is really very nice as a good um, addition to offices with a lot of people. This was what I wanted to share with you, and I pass the floor to the next participant.
So we were going to have a quick Q&A session. I think maybe we'll do it. We're running a bit over time, but we can ask maybe just a couple of questions for a few minutes. So if the speakers are ready, let's see. So we have a question on. It will be for all of the speakers, so whoever is inclined to answer first can do so. But let's go with, do you do trainings within your organization for upskilling? If yes, on which topics?
If I may take the answer, I don't know to whom it was directed, but yes, in effect, this is one of the main tasks is to pass on the knowledge that we co-develop together with various organizations across Europe on different topics regarding energy and resource efficiency. And we do that in various different formats because we aim to maximize impact by doing this during let's say conferences and seminars. And then there is a part of training. There various ways to do that. And we work closely with professional organizations, associations, in chambers with producers and manufacturers in order to create also a bit more interactive and diverse content for the construction workers. And yes, we seek out different ways as to how we can do knowledge transfer on the topic and increase overall the capacity of the construction sector along the whole value chain.
Yeah. If I could just quickly add, so as Circular Economy Foundation, we are using a different approach. So we are looking into digitization and using gamification as a source of education and training. We'll definitely introduce you to the specific tool that we're talking about later on in the slides. But yeah, just wanted to mention it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. I think let's take one more question, and then we'll need to move on to the breakout rooms. And maybe if we have some time at the end, we can take some more questions. So just a quick one is, what, in your sort of experience and your knowledge, what is the greatest motivator for SMEs to integrate training on sustainability or on circular economy skills? So this is open to all of you.
And I think Sylvia, if you would like to take this question.
As mentioned, I think that this this will definitely be a wave. Just the symbol, the analogy that BUSGoCircular uses in its presentation. At the slideshow, the participants shared that the EU legislation is one of the motivators for them to be here and to be interested in this webinar. And this is what we see, that this is a driving force for SMEs to apply and to be interested in such trainings, and vice versa. If the company operates in an asset which is not at the moment directly in the scope of asset class, which is not at the moment directly in the scope of the legislation, or is of a smaller size than 250 employees, they're not that interested, or the interest is very low compared as to the others. So more or less, this is my impression from the situation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. All right, I think let's move on since we're running out of time. So we're going to move towards our breakout rooms. But first, we're going to have a quick briefing from Otis Schwab. So Otis, if you want to give a quick overview. Thanks.
Yeah. So we will go to the breakout rooms, breakout session now. This will take around 15 minutes. Please, next slide, please. So it says here we will divide the group in 4 breakout rooms, but we just decided to divide it in 2 breakout rooms due to the size of the webinar. Group 1 will be moderated by Ira and Sylvia, and group 2 by Srija and myself. You will automatically be directed to this breakout room. Next slide, please. During the breakout session in the breakout room, we'll make use of a mirror board. On the mirror board, you will find 2 questions, and we will ask you to write down your answer on the questions on the post-it. And after each question, we'll have a brief discussion, a conversation about the question and the answers. On the mirror board, you will find 4 so-called storyboards. Please go to the one that's assigned to your group, so group 1 or group 2. And we'll put a link to the mirror board in the chat of the breakout room. And you don't need an account or anything to make use of the mirror board. After 50 minutes, we'll be automatically directed back to the main room. And please don't click on the red leave button at the bottom of your screen, otherwise you will leave the whole webinar. And when we're back, there are 2 more Slido questions, and after the moderators will sum up the conclusions and key takeaways from the breakout rooms. So I think that's it. We can go to the breakout rooms.
Great. Okay, here we go.
I'm not sure if we're all back, but we should be all coming back to the main room. I think, yeah, as I said, we have 2 more questions via Slido, so please scan the code again and put in your answers on the first question we have. Well, it looks like each one of the presented result is almost equally as important. Well, the train experience, the practical experience is in the lead now. I think because of the time, we can go to the next question. And we would like to hear your key takeaways. Yeah, we discussed it already a bit in the breakout rooms, but if there's anything that you would like to mention, feel free to answer it to the Slido. If not, I think we can also go to the, oh, there, never mind. Maybe in the meantime, we can, Srija, would you maybe like to start with summing up the main takeaways from our breakout session?
Sure. Sorry. Yes. We unfortunately we did not have a very active room, but at least from some of the few participants who responded and contributed to our discussion, especially around the challenges, I think we there was a bit of discussion around how we should not be trying to solve all the challenges at once. We should be focusing on setting more realistic targets. I think that's a good takeaway for each and every organization who is participating here, as to it's important for us to prioritize what are the challenges that we have, and then identify the corresponding solutions for that. Even in terms of the construction skills qualification framework that I was talking about previously. So let's wisely use that framework to identify the tasks that are important to us, and then identify the professions, the skill gap, and then develop a training plan dedicated to that. We also discussed a bit into cost, but yeah, not necessarily focused on training, but again, largely there was an acknowledgement that education, training, and awareness is a big challenge in the sector. That's it from my side.
Thank you, Srida. Ira or Sylvia, would like to sum up the conclusions and takeaway from your
Yes, that would be me on our side. The group was also a bit silent as well. However, thanks to everyone who contributed and placed topics like switching the mentality of people, moving from the industrialization and the traditional way of thinking into a more like understanding and a new way of seeing the process with the sustainability, as in terms of sustainability. and to be able to know what is the current state and what is the in what direction should SMEs be moving towards. Other topics are knowing on like how to extend the life of products and of services and of buildings in that sense, how to reuse waste as a resource, and how what kind of circular materials are there and how can they be integrated into the construction process. So there is from different kinds of priorities, but first is to create the understanding, the knowledge of what is the legal framework and the type of mentality that exists, and then to direct it towards the new one. And challenges of training would be again the financial and the time frame that most often would be report. And the advocacy and political will assist is the idea of that through more legislative encouragements, there would be legislative and financial encouragements, there would be greater success into the training process. And yes, that would be from our group. And in case
Just small additions to what you said. I particularly liked what Kate from South Portugal added, that there is ongoing overwhelming volume of EU legislation. And it's very hard to keep in touch with everything that is currently being released. And it is the desire of the company also to plan for the future. So it's also important to know what is the new legislation which is planned on EU basis. And another point which is really very curious, because we had Ronald, which is from South Africa, is this difference between companies which are EU based and companies which are not, and to what extent, for example, the BUSGoCircular training could be applicable also for such companies, and how much it will be useful. So very good points, and I thank them for their participation.
We cannot hear you, Otis.
Sorry, thank you. Also, nice word. I think we can go to the next slides, as we're also almost running out of time. So here are the links to the material that we've spoken about today. We will put the slides and the recording of the webinar on the Build Up website on the same page as you registers for this, so you can find the links to the material in there. Also coming up is e-learning platform. This will probably be launched early next year, January or February. So keep an eye on us to stay updated. Next slide, please. And as we mentioned earlier, this is part of a webinar series by BUSGoCircular. We already had one specified for local authorities, and there will be two more, one for architects and one for training centers. If you are interested or you know people that could be interested, please forward the link for registration. And also, as I said, this webinar also will be recorded and be available on the Build Up platform website. Next slide, please. The link is in the chat. but you will also find it on the same webpage as you registered for this webinar. Next slide, please. And at last, thank you all for joining this morning. I hope you feel inspired, that you learned something or feel inspired to undertake action. And yeah, that's it from us. Have a nice day, and who knows, we'll speak again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
A big thank you to all the speakers and also to the audience.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, you guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah. A reminder that you'll be able to find the recording of today's session on the Build Up portal and on our YouTube channel in the coming days, along with the presentation slides. And Otis mentioned we have 2 remaining sessions of the BUSGoCircular Project webinar series planned for this year, the next of which will, of course, take place on November 28th. So keep an eye on the Build Up calendar, check out the link that we just sent you to find out more information, and you can also keep an eye on our social media for updates on these. So we wish you all a very pleasant week. Thank you and goodbye, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.